Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. If you're a saltwater aquarium enthusiast, you absolutely know the thrill of bringing a new, beautiful animal home. But let's be totally honest with ourselves for a second. That excitement is usually mixed with a healthy dose of anxiety. Dropping a new animal into your tank can sometimes feel like crossing your fingers, holding your breath, and just hoping for the best. Well, today, we're going to completely change that mindset. We're turning that stressful gamble into a highly manageable, practically foolproof process for your saltwater tank. We're going to dive into a fantastic source guide on how to properly acclimate new fish and coral, breaking down exactly how to transition these incredible animals into your home safely and successfully. Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. We're going to cover the risk of sudden change, crucial prep before you start, the drip method for fish, safe coral acclimation protocols, key mistakes to avoid, and finally, post-introduction observation. Let's get right to it.
All right, part one, the risk of sudden change. Adding new life to an aquarium is incredibly exciting, but before we get to the fun part, we really have to talk about the invisible threats hiding right there in the water. I mean, why do so many new fish fail to survive their very first 24 hours? It's a total heartbreak, and if you've been in this hobby a while, you've probably faced it. The culprit? It almost always comes down to sudden shock. When you take a fish or coral and just abruptly move them from the store's water chemistry into your tank, those sudden changes in temperature, salinity, and water chemistry induce massive, severe stress. It's kind of like walking out of a sauna directly into a blizzard. This shock drastically lowers their immune systems, opening the door for disease and ultimately loss. So the entire goal of proper acclimation is to prevent this shock by adapting your new additions to your tank-specific conditions as slowly and gradually as humanly possible.
Okay, moving on to section 2, crucial prep before you start. Listen, the actual acclimation process doesn't magically begin the second you snip open that transport bag. It starts way before that. You literally have to match the environment your fish just left to the one it's about to enter. That means confirming your display tank parameters using solid, reliable test kits. You're looking specifically at salinity or specific gravity, temperature, pH, and, depending on your setup, alkalinity and ammonia or nitrite levels. You also need to have your quarantine setup, or at least a separate holding container, totally ready to go with a stable temperature and some gentle aeration. And hey, here's a really critical pro tip from our source material regarding time. A lot of issues happen because the transport container warms up or cools down way too quickly. So keep that new shipment in stable, shaded conditions while you're doing your prep. Don't let that bag sit out under hot, bright lights while you scramble to dig out your test kits.
Which brings us to section 3, the drip method for fish.
So when the store's water parameters are noticeably different from your display tank, the gradual drip approach is hands down your safest bet. We're going to start the physical process with a very specific number, 15 to 20. That is the exact number of minutes you absolutely must float the sealed bag in your tank. This initial step, it's entirely about temperature equalization. You're simply letting the water inside that sealed bag slowly, naturally match the warmth of the water in your display tank before you even attempt to mix any water chemistry.
Okay, so once that temperature is finally matched, the step-by-step physical transfer begins. After floating the bag, you carefully transfer the fish, along with its store water, into a clean acclimation container. Make sure you keep the fish protected from any sudden temperature swings while you do this. Next up, you set up a slow drip. You can use a siphon or just some basic airline tubing to slowly, drop by drop, add small amounts of your tank water into this container. Finally, once the acclimation is fully complete, you do a gentle transfer of the fish into the tank. And a huge rule here, you want to ensure you are entirely avoiding adding the original store water to your aquarium during that final step. Now let's just slow down for a second and look at these numbers, 45 to 90. This right here is where your patience becomes your most valuable tool as an aquarist. This is the number of minutes your slow drip rate should actually take to gradually change the water volume in that container. As the tank water drips in, it is slowly, safely shifting the parameters to match your display. While this is happening, keep the fish from getting stressed by avoiding nets or overcrowding. Look, if you rush this 45 to 90-minute window, you're pretty much defeating the entire purpose of the drip method in the first place.
All right, let's pivot to section 4, safe coral acclimation protocols.
Now, if you thought fish were delicate, corals are essentially the divas of the ocean. Their biological needs dictate a totally different, highly chemistry-focused workflow. See, while most fish are super sensitive to rapid salinity swings, corals are generally far less tolerant of rapid chemical changes across the board, especially when it comes to pH. But wait, it doesn't stop at just water chemistry. Corals are also ridiculously sensitive to rapid changes in lighting intensity and water flow. So when you bring a coral home, you have to juggle all three of these variables simultaneously to prevent shock. For corals, your target time frame is 30 to 60 minutes. So after floating the bag to match the temperature, you kick off a controlled frag, or coral acclimation. This involves keeping the coral in clean, separate water, ideally the store water it came in, and then introducing your tank water in really small, controlled increments over this 30 to 60-minute window. This meticulous process allows the coral's surrounding water chemistry to shift very, very slowly, prioritizing absolute stability. But getting the chemistry right is really only half the battle. You have to follow strict placement rules once they go into the tank. First, you need stable mounting. Think appropriate frag plugs to reduce the chance of tissue damage from having to repeatedly reposition them. You've also got to match the light intensity the coral is used to and then ramp your lighting up gradually over several days so you don't stress them out. And you absolutely need to ensure appropriate water movement. You'd be amazed how many coral failures happen simply because a perfectly acclimated specimen was dumped in a dead spot with zero flow or placed into overly turbulent currents. Oh, and of course, always avoid letting the coral touch your bare hands, contaminated tools, or substrate that might have pests or irritants on it.
Moving right along to Section 5, Key Mistakes to Avoid.
We've talked extensively about what you should do, but let's talk about what absolutely not to do. The fatal errors that can instantly ruin a perfectly planned setup. Number 1, never skip temperature equalization. It sounds so incredibly basic, I know, but trust me, it is so easily forgotten when you're super eager to get that beautiful new animal into the tank. But remember, even tiny differences in temperature can induce severe stress super quickly, basically setting the stage for disease before the animal is even fully introduced.
Second major mistake, never add store water directly to your display tank. Just don't do it. Think of that transport water as a high-risk vector. By pouring it in, you're potentially introducing hidden contaminants, unseen pathogens, or unwanted nutrients that you absolutely do not want polluting your carefully balanced reef environment. Next up, you really must avoid overhandling, frequent netting, or rushing that drip process. When you're dealing with animals that are this sensitive to salinity and chemistry changes, faster is never better. Keep physical handling strictly to a minimum, don't repeatedly reposition them, and just let the slow drip do its job to keep their stress levels as low as possible.
And a really important warning for all our reef keepers out there, do not place your new coral immediately under intense light. Shocking corals with a sudden blast of high-intensity lighting almost always leads to immediate bleaching and severe tissue retraction. It is a massive, sudden environmental change that they simply cannot adapt to instantly.
All right, final section, number 6, post-introduction observation.
So, the acclimation process doesn't just magically end the second the animal is finally swimming in your tank. Actually, the following days are the true final test, and you need to monitor your new additions very closely. But what exactly are you looking for? Well, for fish, you want to watch for abnormal swimming patterns or excessive hiding behavior. Those are clear visual indicators of lingering stress. For corals, the primary visual cue is excessive tissue retraction. If a coral stays completely closed up and retracted for days on end, it's basically waving a red flag, telling you it is struggling to adapt to its new home.
Now, if you do observe these serious symptoms, you have to be incredibly smart and disciplined about your next move. Above all else, avoid making drastic changes to your tank parameters. If a new addition looks sick, consider whether targeted quarantine intervention is appropriate. But whatever you do, please never panic and alter your main tank's stable parameters trying to fix things for one new animal. If you do that, you'll just end up stressing out all your existing healthy livestock, and nobody wants that. Which brings us to a final underlying question for anyone engaged in this awesome hobby. Are you prepared to be the ultimate caretaker for your mini ecosystem? When we bring these incredible, vibrant pieces of the ocean into our homes, it's literally our duty and our responsibility to provide the slow, controlled, and stable environments they require to survive. By mastering these strict, methodical acclimation protocols, from temperature matching to the slow chemistry drip, you aren't just blindly dropping a fish in a tank, you are actively ensuring these animals have the absolute best possible chance to settle in and thrive for years to come. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and we'll catch you on the next one.